We've all been there, trying to make positive changes in our life, only to go back to our old ways. Well, there might be a formula to make those changes stick. Now, as we get into healthy habits, there are a number of different patterns in our lives, and understanding them can help us make better changes. And I want you to walk us through these, Dr. Gass, because habits, and anyone who thinks that habits can't be broken, they actually can. It takes work, correct?
Yes.
But we can change our habits.
And that's where we get into understanding some of the systemic aspect of what's a habit, what's a pattern, and then, of course, the system. So a lot of times we think, well, a habit is just this thing that I do, and I don't know why I do it, but I just do it, right? But when you understand the deeper meaning, so like the habit really is just kind of our symptomatic expression of a pattern. It's what results from something else. And so when you understand that a habit is just like a symptom, then you go, you can look into understanding more about what's the pattern, okay? The pattern that's creating that habit or feeding that habit, supporting that habit. And that's really the underlying cause or reaction to, you could say, stories that we've created to ourselves.
So what you're saying is that behind every habit, there's a pattern that feeds that habit.
Yes. Yes, and so when we get closer to understanding the pattern that's feeding that habit, then we don't need the habit as much, right? Because it's just like you address the cause, you don't have the symptoms anymore, from medically speaking. And then from there, when we talk, when we understand kind of like what pattern is it that's asking for attention, is it like, for example, eating? That's a common one we'd like to talk about when you've got some emotional trigger, or like, bad day at work or boyfriend breakup or whatever it is, and you go home and then you think, oh, what am I going to do? Okay, I'm going to go eat this ice cream. And not just one bite, but I'm going to have the whole thing. The whole quart. So then you look at, okay, what's that deeper pattern that's creating that emotional reaction to the bad day? And do you have choices? And yes, we do.
Yes.
So then we look at the systems, and those are kind of those unresolved attitudes or judgments or biases that tell us what are we really thinking? What are those systems doing for us and to us? Who are we loyal to? Who are we not loyal to? All of those kinds of things. And that feeds the pattern, which then feeds the habit.
Now, we're going to talk more about this, but I do want to take a moment to remind our viewers that you can call in if you have a question. That number is 855-796-4475. We're standing by and love to hear from you. Now, what is the difference between starting a habit and getting rid of a habit?
If only we asked that question before we started the habit.
We wouldn't have this issue.
And of course, we learn habits from our environment. Right. We see on TV, like, eating that ice cream is going to solve that, that bad moment or breakup. But it doesn't really.
It doesn't.
No, it doesn't. So So it's about understanding the pattern and the symptom or the system that's causing that desire to react. If I want to change that, I want to go back and figure out what pattern am I in, so then I can have choices about how I want to express that pattern, or how I want to even acknowledge that story. So we were talking during the break, I'm named Wendy after Peter Pan, so I love stories, and we can tell stories that are accurate or inaccurate. For like Peter's thought all adults are bad pirates, it's no fun to grow up, so we're not going to grow up. Right? But when he can, kind of like in, the analogy, the movie Hook, where he can realize that you can have both, now that need to be the pirate is reduced. You can just be you, however that looks like.
Absolutely. Now let's go ahead and look at some steps for forming healthy habits. And the first one is recognizing the habit for what it is. And now, what do you mean by that?
So that goes again to recognizing that pattern. Like usually some event triggers that reaction. And when you can recognize the trigger, that, okay, I get in this situation and I tend to react this way, right? Okay, when you recognize the trigger of the habit before it happens, now it's like you can stop the stress before you react.
So it really is a lot of listening and paying attention to the way that you react to certain situations.
Yes. Yes, there's some schools of thought that say, be the observer of you and your body in your story, as opposed to being, the actor or being like in the middle of it. Observe what's going on. Observe how your patterns. How do you react in these situations? And now, when you're recognizing the pattern, recognizing the system. Sorry, I keep saying symptom, system that it's coming from. Am I needing recognition? Am I needing acceptance? Am I needing loyalty? So how can I go about doing that differently?
I want to use a specific example. If you can give me one, Dr. Gass, and then we can apply exactly what we just saw. So how we can recognize that and change the habit and become aware and make those changes. So let's say, use an example.
Well, so of course I'm gonna go to the parent one. Our kids figure out our buttons really fast, and they love to push them. And so it's, and then of course we go into this reaction mode, and my kids love to tease me and get me going down these roads of stories that I'm really believing but not believing, but know that I shouldn't be believing, because I know that they're really teasing, but
and then you almost.
And then I go, I get caught up in that whole scene, but stepping back, taking that breath, if you will, of recognizing, oh, they're just doing that trigger thing. They're doing that button thing. Okay, now I can.
As opposed to reacting to it.
Reacting, now I can play along with them. And instead of thinking that they're really being serious when they're not.
Right. For more tips to reach your goals, visit us online. And remember, if you have a question, reach out. You can send us an email by visiting our website, allhealthtv.com, or give us a ring, 855-796-4475.